のマシンと化したポケモンたち、そして待ち受ける謎、ポケモンの新しい本格 RPG、 任天堂ゲームキューブポケモン XD 闇の風ダークルギア。
Welcome folks, I'm Livvvid. Released in October 2005 for North America and coming to the Switch 2 online expansion pack almost 20 years later, Pokémon XD Gale of Darkness is the second Pokémon RPG developed by Genius Sonority and the final Pokémon game released on the GameCube. XD stands for Extra Dimension. It's the follow-up to Pokémon Colosseum, released just a year prior. That game was a more mature take on Pokémon, centralized in the new Ore region. I have a video on that game that covers more of the core elements to these games. This video will talk about XD as a sequel and may not cover all the elements from my first video. XD takes place back at the Ore region almost 5 years after the events of Pokémon Colosseum. Team Cipher is back and trying to take over the region with their shadow Pokémon. You play as a boy named Michael with his Eevee, and you must save the Ore region from the resurgence of Team Cipher by snagging shadow Pokemon and purifying their hearts. But Team Cipher has an ultimate weapon they've been working on. One capable of picking up an entire cruise ship out of the water and carrying it off to who knows where. I've never played Pokemon XD and I don't have any strong biases coming into playing it. For this video, I played on an emulator.
Move this man!
Yeah, let's talk about it. I do own this game for the GameCube, and for many of my Pokemon Generation 3 videos, I've insisted on using my actual hardware in order to show things like transferring. I think that's an interesting topic when speaking about the main series Pokemon games because they're not widely used anymore, and it's interesting to remember how it used to be done. Well, when I was playing XD on my GameCube, the game would crash at the same spot about an hour in, saying there was an error. My CD didn't have any visible scratches, and I kept trying to tinker around to get it to work, but it just wouldn't. So I had to emulate the game, and that bummed me out a lot. The good news is the game is running on an emulator and looks absolutely gorgeous, so at least you'll have some nice gameplay footage. It's been 5 years since the events of Pokémon Colosseum, where Team Snag'em and Team Cipher colluded together to create and distribute Shadow Pokémon. The game opens up showing the SS Libra sailing the seas when a Shadow Pokémon arrives and lifts up the entire ship with this enormous dark energy. You play as a boy named Michael, who is listed at age 13 to 19 according to Bulbapedia. I'm gonna guess it's closer to 13 because Wes from the first game was 17 and Michael looks much younger. Michael is accompanied by his Pokemon Eevee, which is known for its wide options of evolutions. Michael's a skilled trainer who lives at a scientific lab with his mother Lily and his sister Jovi, who I often call Bon Jovi. Michael did have a father that is mentioned, which is rare for a Pokemon game, but unfortunately Michael's father has passed away. The goal of this lab is to find ways to cure Shadow Pokemon and open their hearts again. They've even created a Snag'em machine that can also detect Shadow Pokemon, which used to only be done by mysterious powers that Rui had in the first game. This means that Michael can travel throughout the game by himself because his Snag'em machine can both identify and capture Shadow Pokemon. After Professor Crane of the lab is kidnapped by a mysterious group for his expertise on Shadow Pokemon, the adventure to save him and Shadow Pokemon of the region begins. This mysterious group is Team Cipher from the first game, a group that was creating and distributing Shadow Pokemon throughout the Ore region. They also worked with Team Snag'em, who snagged the Pokemon that were corrupted. Snag'em is kind of doing their own thing, but Cipher's back to revive the old plan. This actually makes a lot of sense. No matter how many times you beat Snag'em and Cipher members in the first game, they just wouldn't give up. They'd appear again later in the story and promise revenge after defeats. By the time you beat Pokémon Colosseum, it was a bittersweet feeling. You got the sense that both groups still very much existed and that there was unfinished business. I like this story progression because it actually makes the story in both games better. It acknowledges that Cipher and Snag'em weren't done and also shows how zealous they are in the things they believe in. Had they gone with different villains, the first game would have had a weird ending that would have made me wonder about both groups in the sequel without them. Although there is one issue, Wes and Rui, the main characters from the first games, aren't anywhere to be found. They're mentioned along with their deeds, but they don't actually appear in the game. This is strange. Wes makes a little more sense because he used to live a life of crime tagging along with Team Snag'em. But Rui isn't in the game either, which is strange considering you can still go to her hometown and visit her grandparents, who she cares about a lot. I'm not sure what my headcanon would be for that. Maybe you guys have some ideas. It would be interesting hearing what you guys come up with. The gameplay is very similar to the first game. All of the battles in this game involve double battles. You travel the region liberating places and Pokemon from Team Cipher. You add these Shadow Pokemon to your party and cleanse them so they can be used to help you. Many of the same locations we knew from the first game make a return, like Agate Village, Mount Battle, Pyrite Town, and much more. Then there are plenty of new locations. The lab itself is in a quiet grove-like area that gives off a campus feeling. You come here to meet back up with your family, use a new purification chamber and battle simulator, or just relax. Kaminko's house is the home of Dr. Kaminko and his assistant Chobin. It's an insane, creepy manor house filled with wacky scientists. Although the location seems ominous and Chobin's blind ass will battle you continually throughout the game because he thinks you're intruders, they're actually good guys and vital to aiding you on your quest to crush Team Cipher. Gadion Port is a beautiful coastal city where you find a ton of items, people that specialize in equipment needed throughout the journey, and where you meet Mr. Verich, who is accompanied by his bodyguards, Eldis and Artus. They come in and save someone being bullied. Man, I'm sure these are nice guys. It's even mentioned that the super good guy Mr. Verich lets the town eat for free on his dime just because he's such a nice guy. There are now 83 Shadow Pokemon. That's 35 more than the 48 offered in the first game. While the first game focused a lot on Generation 2 Pokemon, XD has a much broader blend that gives you more familiar Generation 3 Pokemon and a bunch of Generation 1 Pokemon too. There have been a lot of changes to how Shadow Pokemon work now. Hyper mode has been changed to reverse mode. You can still call a Pokemon while it's in this mode to reduce its heart gauge though. The exclusive Shadow Rush move in this game has had its power reduced but no longer causes recoil. This is a huge improvement because much of this game's gameplay is capturing Shadow Pokemon. In order to make capturing Pokemon easier, their health needs to be lower, and you literally can't afford to spend all your money on wasted Pokeballs. But when Shadow Pokemon use moves that inflict damage on themselves, they can faint, which sucks. They can be captured later, but if you're anything like me, you want to capture them as soon as you see them to broaden your choices of Pokemon and not leave you homework for later. Then there are tons of new Shadow moves like Shadow Blast, Shadow Bolt, Shadow Rave, and even Shadow status moves like Shadow Shed. I got to near the end of the game and was still seeing new Shadow moves I hadn't seen before. They often have normal move counterparts but in a Shadow form. Shadow Pokemon moves are now also super effective against anything non-Shadow, and Shadow moves on them are not very effective. This increased the difficulty and added a lot more tension to the battles because sitting around trying to catch them meant more punishment on your Pokemon. But a cool thing you could do was lead with a couple of Shadow Pokemon when you were trying to catch a new one, as basically no move from the Shadow Pokemon would do much damage to them. They acted as perfect meat shields. This didn't just have gameplay ramifications for me, it actually made me buy the concept of the benefits of creating Shadow Pokemon in the first place. In the first game, a Shadow Pokemon basically learned less moves and could only use Shadow Rush, which hurt itself. Outside of the swirling mustache evil, I didn't really see the benefit of making a Shadow Pokemon when they weren't really that tough. This game gives Shadow Pokemon a logical reason for why somebody would want to do such a thing to a Pokemon. The Shadow typing is unique and now is super effective against anything non-Shadow. Now I can buy into the reasoning behind why Cipher wants to do all of this. Back at Gadion Port, we happen to find an Eevee expert who will give us a stone for our Eevee. What are the odds of that? Eevee still only has 5 evolutions back in Generation 3. The original evolutions, Flareon, Jolteon, and Vaporeon, are all available in addition to Umbreon and Espeon from Generation 2 and returning from Pokemon Colosseum. Before choosing a stone, you're given a nice layout explaining what the stone will evolve Eevee into in addition to what ability it will get. This layout is not only good for any potentially new players, but even for someone like me to this day. You can only make this decision once and is basically you're choosing a starter moment. One of my first videos on Pokemon was explaining why I think choice is so important to the fun of playing Pokemon. Eevee was one of my main points of discussion because I see it as the ultimate Pokemon of choice. Getting to choose between wildly different evolutions gives the player a lot of control in how they start and develop their team of 6. And the fact that you get 5 choices is great. I did end up choosing Espeon, which may seem boring as you're given an Espeon and an Umbreon in the first game. My logic was I assumed I want to get access to many early Psychic type Pokemon or moves, but that I would get access to things like Water and Electric type moves to add to my team early in game. I went in blind with this game, but my assumptions ended up being mostly correct. There is a ball toy you can get early which is Psychic type, but I wanted a little bit more speed for my Psychic attacker, so Espeon fit that role perfectly. Espeon and Umbreon normally evolve through high friendship and depending on if it's night or day. I was a little bit worried about that because friendship in the normal games in an early Pokemon generation takes a bit of time to raise up, and things like Pokemon fainting can cause friendship to reduce. But in this game they added a stone for Espeon and Umbreon, and while friendship kind of still exists, you just need to win one battle for Eevee to evolve, so that fear was quickly dissolved. I'm really happy it worked out like that because Espeon learns Confusion at level 16 and the entire point of selecting it would have been pointless if I missed out on learning that vital move. With so many Shadow Pokemon, there was a lot more options for a team. I liked my team, but there were some minor hiccups. We spoke about Espeon, who acted as my nimble Psychic attacker. Then there was Houndoom. Its mix of dark and fire typings along with its speed added a lot to the team. And just look at this design, he's so badass! This is also a little boy's dream coming true. Houndour is its pre-evolved form from Generation 2. As one of the more cool Generation 2 Pokemon, it wasn't available in those games until the post-game where you're back in Kanto. One of the things I often tussle about with the Pokemon series is how I would structure the games myself. There are so many Pokemon, but sometimes you can't add something on your team until the late game. But by the time you're in the late game, you're in the late game. There's barely any adventure left to be had with this Pokemon. So this is one of the first times I've gotten to use a Houndour into a Houndoom right at the beginning of the journey. Walrein was a Pokemon I never used before. I liked its Ice Water typing and its bulk. The thing I didn't like was that the only water move it learns naturally is Water Gun, which gets outclassed very quickly as its power is low. It doesn't naturally learn a better move in Generation 3, and I couldn't find any TMs in the game to help me out there. But I did eventually teach it Ice Beam. Ice Beam along with its bulk helped me out a lot against Dragon and Flying types. Ampharos. Ah yes, another Generation 2 Pokemon I'm very familiar with. I've used Ampharos a million times at this point in my life, but I couldn't resist. Its electric attacks are great, and it also learned Thunder Wave. Ampharos and Thunder Wave were basically my only long-standing strategy for catching Pokemon in this game. I would put paralysis on the Shadow Pokemon, which made it easier to catch, but also sometimes made them unable to attack me. Altaria. The Dragon and Flying type was extremely useful against Pokemon trying to use Earthquake spam on me. Also, Flying type moves definitely helped out a lot when it came to a certain trainer who likes to use 5 Ludicolo. Tyranitar. Much like the Houndoom dilemma, Tyranitar is a Pokemon I've seldom used in a Pokemon playthrough due to its lack of availability. You don't get access to this Pokemon's pre-evolutions in Generation 2 until basically the last moments of the post-game. It's a pseudo-legendary Pokemon, which means it's powerful as hell, and just look at this damn thing. Its Dark typing didn't help much as far as offense because it's a physical-based attacker and Dark type moves in Generation 3 are special. But that typing helped me nullify Psychic and Ghost type attackers. But I'm a trainer of style. If you look cool, you're on the team. The issue with Tyranitar is it doesn't evolve until level 55, and I didn't know how the level progression was going to work in this game. It turns out you'll probably end the game with your Pokemon around level 50 if you had a full team, so I had to use all 6 rare candies I had found through the game to get Pupitar into Tyranitar. It was worth it though. Its stats were great and would cause Sandstorm when it entered the battlefield, helping me greatly with a certain trainer who would use Rain Dance a lot. Alright, I keep alluding to a certain trainer. There are numerous characters who returned from the first game, but there is only one worth talking about. Mirror B. He looks even more funky and fresh than last time, but now Mirror B is more of a free agent, doing what he feels like more so than taking orders. This completely makes sense to his character. I'm still not sure what his motivations are other than being as funky as possible, and he's succeeding. He returns along with his absolutely ridiculous Ludicolo that drive me insane. After they set up Rain Dance, it becomes a nightmare to fight them. The difficulty of this game also feels increased, but balanced. It gradually snowballs rather than exploding in difficulty at any one point. Only a few hours into the game, you return to the Cipher lab, and my Espeon had already been underleveled against my opponents. This is when I knew the game would have a healthy but gradual difficulty increase. This increase in difficulty made me pay attention to what was going on throughout the game rather than it becoming easy and tedious or mundane. I also forgot in my last video to talk about the lack of HMs in these games, which is so welcome. It proves you don't need them to have an RPG, although this concept would not be carried over into the core series games until Generation 7. Some HMs are good battle moves like Surf, but others like Cut are bad in Generation 3. Having to give up precious move slots to make room for an HM that is likely used once to progress to the next area, or maybe a few times to get a few items, is the worst feeling I can imagine. You could regulate HMs to a single Pokemon you don't use in battle, but it's annoying shuffling out party slots when you want to level up something else. Anyway, I'm glad they're not in this game. This game is full of quality of life improvements too. Some big, some small. A huge one is the purification chamber back at the lab. I won't lie and act like I know how it works in the most efficient way, but basically you place a Shadow Pokemon in the Purification Chamber and use Cleanse Pokemon to help them in the healing of the Shadow Pokemon. This was pretty huge because it meant you could actually play the game normally while Shadow Pokemon were slowly healing back at the chamber. You can now save in the pause screen rather than going to the PC. The PDA will notify you when a Pokemon can be purified rather than constantly checking. Pokespots have been added which allow you to capture wild Pokemon. Yup, life is returning to the Ore region. You place down food at these Pokespots and your PDA will let you know when a wild Pokemon has shown up so that you can go and catch it. In my last video I talked about there not being many worthwhile TMs as pickup items. You could still get battle points from the Colosseums to buy them, but that meant more painstaking grinding. Well, in XD they definitely fixed that. You could pick up TMs like Ice Beam, Flamethrower, Thunderbolt, and Earthquake as pick up TMs. Getting these moves are great, but they're not even overpowered in this game. It feels fair. Shadow Pokemon are tougher. Their levels are higher. You need a boost that didn't mean hours of beating up on trainers in the Colosseums. When you use the call command on a non-Shadow Pokemon or a Shadow Pokemon not in reverse mode, it will increase their accuracy. This is a nice little change because there is this awkward phase in battle against a Shadow Pokemon when you have it isolated and are trying to catch it. Only one of your two commands can be used to throw a Pokeball that turn. This meant you could use an item, switch out your Pokemon, or more likely just use the call command because you didn't want to attack the Shadow Pokemon any longer because it would likely faint. But in the first game, a call would simply do nothing if it didn't have a valid target. Well, now what would have been a wasted turn gives you accuracy. In reality, it doesn't matter. If you already don't want that Pokemon to attack, the accuracy doesn't do anything. But it's the feel good of knowing that using the call command actually did something for that turn. As you carve your way through Team Cipher, you start to unravel their real operations. You discover the SS Libra in the middle of the desert, apparently dropped off by that Shadow Pokemon. I don't think I can entirely explain why, but this is such a cool setting. The ship has been turned into a makeshift living quarters, making it into a home for some. Maybe it's the idea that a cruise ship is just sitting in the desert in a region that is already post-apocalyptic. I don't know, it's just cool. After the ship, you arrive at Cipher Key Layer. I just call it the Pyramid. This is where Cipher has been crafting Shadow Pokemon on an industrial scale. And just look at how evil this place is. It's a mix of ancient ruins and evil futuristic technology. The pyramid even has eyes. The inside is much of the same, a mix of evil, ancient, and futuristic. You actually get to see the industrial capacity at which Cipher is producing Shadow Pokemon. The increase of Shadow Pokemon in this game was likely to give the player more options, but it also makes sense that there would be tons of new ones considering how many are being made at this place. This is also where Team Cipher members begin to have 2 Shadow Pokemon in their party. This is the first place I remember this happening in either of the games, and it threw me for a loop. This is a different type of difficulty, especially when you want to catch them now versus later in game, but it was a fun type of difficulty. In a grand throne room, you fight Gorgon, the Monkey Man. Yeah, I don't know why he has the mannerisms of a monkey, but it works, it's cool. After defeating the Simian Menace, a video appears. It's our hero, Mr. Varich. Maybe he's here to help us. Nope, he's the evil villain Greevil, the true master of Cipher. Alright, so it's war, Dr. Greevil. Greevil is on Citadark Island, or as I like to call it, Super Bad Boy Island. It's so over the top and extremely evil. Liquid hot magma pouring from a volcano, blackened skies, and of course a massive evil lair. There is a level of campy that is so self-aware that I love it, and XD hits that mark. Nobody who made this game is taking itself too seriously. They're having fun with it. This facility is an absolute gauntlet. You're fighting Cipher's toughest trainers who also have multiple Shadow Pokemon. I had to backtrack numerous times just to heal. It was really rough. Eventually you encounter Greevil's bodyguard, Ardos, who has 3 Shadow Pokemon. This fight was insane. He absolutely kicked my ass. To be honest, it wasn't even close. In my defense, he had 3 Shadow Pokemon, and when you're trying to catch them when they're both using super effective moves on your team and higher level than you, it's tough. Either way, I need to train. I wasn't ready for the end game. So I head back to Realgum Tower, where the first game's final moments take place during the main story. It was time for a montage. Alright, now I'm ready. Upon my return to Citadark, I destroyed Ardos in our rematch. Eldest was Greevil's second bodyguard, and was a really hard fight because he had 4 Shadow Pokemon. I will say I got really lucky in this fight because a lot of the Pokeballs I threw caught within a few attempts. It was time for Greevil in his ultimate Shadow Pokemon XD 001. XD001 is a legendary Pokemon, Lugia. This domed battle arena is so damn cool. This is a great place for a final battle. The battle with Greevil is in 2 phases. Phase 1 is just against XD001. That was actually much easier than you'd think because it's always a 2v1 and you can use status effects on it. The hard part was actually catching it. I really tried catching this thing without using my Master Ball, but I got tired and ended up just using it. Then there's a second phase against Greevil. His entire team is Shadow Pokemon, and 3 of them are the legendary birds Articuno, Zapdos, and Moltres. This immediately reminded me of the plot for the Pokemon 2000s movie where the villain was trying to control those birds and get Lugia. It was pretty awesome getting to kind of play out the events of that game in a way. I did catch all of Greevil's Pokemon, but I came in with a pretty good idea that worked out for me. I figured I would catch Lugia at some point and left a spot open on my party so that if I did catch it, I could use it in a longer fight. Then I'd have a strong Shadow Pokemon to help soak up damage, and that's exactly how it worked. Lugia soaked up tons of damage that wasn't effective against it, and I slowly but surely caught all of Greevil's Pokemon. After defeating Greevil, it's revealed that he is the father to both Eldis and Ardos. Eldis convinces Greevil to abandon this whole thing. A pure-hearted trainer like Michael defeated their strongest Shadow Pokemon. It's over. Their experiments failed. Ardos leaves in a tantrum, but Eldis and Greevil do give up. As the ending cinematic rolls, it shows the Ori region celebrating your great triumph. We didn't get this type of end credit scene in the first game, and I think that was intentional. There wasn't much fanfare for the victory in Colosseum. It's as if everybody knew Cipher and Snag'em was largely still lurking around. It definitely felt like there was unfinished business. Members from both Snag'em and Cipher never said sorry, and very few actually gave up. Even in the post-game of Colosseum, you keep encountering them. After defeating the true master of Cipher, it does finally feel like there is resolution. Their entire operations have been crumbled and their leadership has given up. This time, it really does feel like it's over for Cipher and that the Ori region is saved. When you combine the stories of these two games, it strengthens both. It makes me feel like there was an outline to these games and had some planning go into execution. Or maybe not, and the person writing XD felt they needed to answer some things. Whichever is the case, I think it feels like a great way to do a sequel that gives logical reasoning to both stories. There is a post-game after the credits roll. You can battle Egan in a very Pika battle. He then tells you about the Ore Colosseum, which is the most Colosseum-like Colosseum in either of these games. It's so badass. It's a Roman-like Colosseum being held up by earthen fingers, and you battle in the palm of Gaia's hand. It's so sweet. There's also the hunt for any remaining Shadow Pokemon you've missed. Once you've caught them all, there is only one way this can end. The funky, fabulous man himself, Mirror B. The final fight atop the lighthouse. Mirror B is really pissed about you saving all the Shadow Pokemon and mentions that he has the last ever Shadow Pokemon not held by the good guys. Of course, his team is again comprised of 5 extremely annoying Ludicolo. Tyranitar was my savior here. I would switch him in to cause Sandstorm to negate the effects of Ludicolo using Rain Dance. His final Pokemon was the Shadow Pokemon, Dragonite. Once you finally catch Dragonite, that's it. It's all over. There are no longer Shadow Pokemon remaining in the hands of the bad boys. I really liked Pokemon XD. It had so many improvements from the first game. The roster felt much more fleshed out. The game had a tough but fair difficulty increase. The Purification Chamber made the gameplay feel fluid. Even small changes like adding really good pickup TMs was a direct request I wanted after playing the first game. It's a great sequel that I can definitely see myself playing again in the future, hopefully on a new disc for my GameCube. There's only one thing that confused me though. I saw some Pokemon I didn't recognize, Bonsly and Munchlax. I couldn't find them anywhere in my Pokedex, and I can't catch them either. Huh, weird. Folks, that's all I've got for Pokemon XD. Thank you for watching until the end. If you like this video, please like, comment, and subscribe. I really appreciate it, and it helps out a lot. Thank you to my YouTube channel members and patrons. I also have a Discord you are more than welcome to join. I'll see you guys in the next video.